So you're now taking all responsibility. What's your inheritance? Oh, no. All right, there we go. Good evening and welcome to the public hearing of the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment. My name is Robert Hawkins. I am the MLA for Yellowknife Centre as well as the chair of the Standing Committee. At this time, I will ask members in the room to introduce themselves, and I will start off on my right with the only member in the room at the moment, so please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. My name is Kate Reed. I'm the MLA for Great Slave here in Yellowknife.
Thank you, MLA Reed. Online, I believe we have at least one member. I'll allow that member to introduce themselves.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Julian Morse, MLA for Frame Lake here in Yellowknife.
Okay, and thank you for that. So this evening we have Bill 50, Marine Transportation Corporation Act. It's received a second reading in the Legislative Assembly on June 3rd, 2026. Bill 50 proposes to transition Marine Transportation Services, sometimes referred to as MTS, from the public service to a newly created Crown Corporation. This committee has been tasked with reviewing the bill to see if it needs any changes. If it has any issues, we can solve, and if it is ready to continue on its path to becoming law. This evening, the committee will hear from the sponsor of the bill, the Honourable Minister for Infrastructure. After that, we'll open the floor to any members of the public here today who wish to share their feedback on Bill 50 with committee. That said, I believe we have a presentation. And I believe we also have a public presentation on this, not just speaking to it as well. So at this time, both me, my colleagues, and our millions of subscribers are looking forward to hearing from the Minister and staff with respect to this. And I will now call upon the Minister for your opening remarks.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before committee. This public hearing on Bill 50, the Marine Transportation Act. Today I'm joined by Menzie McEachran, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Programs and Services, Nicole Bonnell, the Director of Marine Services Transition Initiative, Jacques Robert, the Senior Legislative Advisor, and Jeff Ray, Ministerial Special Advisor. The Marine Transportation Corporation Act was introduced in the Legislative Assembly on June 2nd, 2026. MTS plays a vital dual role in the Northwest Territories. It delivers essential fuel and cargo to NWT communities while operating as a commercial marine transportation enterprise. Elsewhere in Canada, marine shipping services are not operated within government departments. MTS currently structure limits its ability to respond quickly to client needs, manage risk, and take advantage of new business opportunities. The legislative proposal proposes creating a Crown Corporation, a legal entity separate from the government, to provide services on the Great Slave Lake and the Mackenzie River in the Arctic Ocean and elsewhere. The legislative proposal outlined that the Crown Corporation would have neutral person power, including the ability to contract, own property, employ personnel, incur debts subject to the rules under the Financial Administration Act, and create subsidiaries. Finally, the legislative proposal called for the GNWT to retain oversight over the corporation through a shared ownership of ministerial powers. Building on this, Bill 50 proposes to transition marine transportation services from the Northwest Government Division, to a Crown Corporation with a modern, efficient governance structure. The corporation would have an independent board of directors and operate an arm's length of government while remaining publicly owned and accountable. There will be no change on how residents and businesses and local government access services, and the service levels and the relationship will continue as they do today. This transition will provide greater flexibility, improve services, strengthen financial sustainability, and support long-term growth. I'll now turn it over to Nicole for the brief overview of the bill, and after which we'll be happy to take questions from you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. I'm sure there's no objection. I'll now go to Director Bonnell to walk us through your presentation. Please, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the Minister mentioned, my name is Nicole Bonnell, and I'm the Director of the Marine Services Transition Initiative. I'm here to present on Bill 50, Marine Transportation Corporation Act, and to outline what is being proposed, why the change is being considered, and what it means for residents and communities. I'll begin with a brief history of marine transportation services, then walk through the purpose of the legislation, what is being proposed, key features, expected outcomes, and next steps. For 80 years, NTCL acted as lifeline to remote communities along the Mackenzie River and Arctic coastline. They were the largest marine transportation services provider in the Northwest Territories, delivering essential petroleum products and cargo, including consumer goods and construction materials. NTCL often acted as the sole supply line for communities. Following NTCL's bankruptcy in 2016, the GNWT stepped in to acquire the company's assets and ensure continuity of service. Since then, MTS has been run as a government division, and we've gained nearly a decade of operational experience in the marine transportation sector. During this period, private sector options were also explored, but no viable provider emerged. There are many benefits to creating a Crown corporation independent from government. Currently, operating from within the public service has imposed administrative burdens and constraints that limit MTS's ability to make decisions in a timely manner, adjust to client needs, and develop new opportunities. It is also highly unusual among Canadian jurisdictions to operate this type of marine transportation service from within the public service. Marine transportation is typically delivered through Crown corporations or through the private sector. With the aforementioned challenges in mind, an independent review was completed in late 2024 and confirmed that transitioning to a Crown corporation is the most effective option for MTS. The purpose of the Marine Transportation Corporation Act is to transition MTS into a Crown corporation. Specifically, the bill proposes to establish the Marine Transportation Corporation with an independent board of directors, provide greater operational flexibility so decisions can be made quickly and in response to client needs, align the NWT with other Canadian jurisdictions that operate marine transportation services outside of the public service, and maintain government oversight to ensure accountability and alignment with the needs of NWT residents, including ensuring affordable transportation for remote communities. Importantly, there will be no change to how communities and clients access service. I will now walk through the key features of the Marine Transportation Corporation Act. First, the corporation would have full corporate powers, including contracting, owning assets, hiring staff, and borrowing funds. An independent board of directors would oversee governance and strategy. Board members will be appointed by and serve at the pleasure of the responsible minister for terms of up to 3 years. This creates a clear separation between operational decisions and government policy direction. As part of the transition, the existing Marine Transportation Revolving Fund would be dissolved once the corporation assumes operations, as it would no longer be required under the new governance structure. Financial authorities and powers subject to applicable rules and oversight would be under the Financial Administration Act. Importantly, and in line with how NTPC also functions, the proposed Crown Corporation would be exempt from the GNWT procurement policy for procurement of goods and services of $500,000 or less. In terms of government oversight, the GNWT would remain the sole shareholder of the corporation. This oversight would be maintained through board appointments, reporting requirements, service agreements, and subsidy control. This ensures accountability and alignment with public priorities. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the corporation's financial authorities, including borrowing and financial management, will remain subject to the Financial Administration Act. This ensures strong financial oversight, transparency, and alignment with GNWT standards. Of note, the Act also contemplates a future state where the Crown Corporation could be sold, in whole or in part, should the Commissioner in Executive Council make an order to do so. Rates would be set by the Board of Directors using a clear and transparent methodology. They must be fair, reasonable, and financially sustainable and reflect the actual costs of providing the service. The GNWT retains the ability to establish rate-setting principles through regulation. The goal is to balance affordability for communities with long-term financial sustainability of the Crown Corporation. Ensuring continuity of service is a core priority throughout this transition. Communities, businesses, and governments will continue to access marine transportation services in the same way, and there will be no changes to how services are delivered. All unionized MTS employees who are indeterminate employees of the GNWT at the time of transition will receive a reasonable job offer with comparable terms and conditions with the new Crown Corporation. No indeterminate unionized staff employed at the time of transition will lose their job as a result of this change. The intention is for the transfer of employment to occur effective January 1, 2028. And to be very clear, the transition is about strengthening the organization, not losing what makes it successful. There are no anticipated job losses associated with this change. We also recognize the importance of union representation and are committed to continued transparency and collaboration. Our hope is that some form of union partnership will continue under this new structure, and discussions on what this will look like are ongoing. This new model is expected to improve responsiveness, flexibility, and operational effectiveness. Most importantly, it ensures continued, reliable, and affordable service for communities. The Crown Corporation will bring several financial and operational benefits, including improved financial sustainability, long-term cost efficiencies, and the ability to pursue new business opportunities. Operating as a separate legal entity also helps limit financial liability exposure to the GNWT. From a public interest perspective, the Crown Corporation will continue to deliver affordable transportation for communities, including reliable fuel and cargo delivery. Strong alignment with GNWT priorities will remain through board governance and GNWT policy oversight. As previously mentioned, and also in the public interest, the Crown Corporation will operate as a separate legal entity, which helps limit financial liability exposure to the GNWT. The Act is targeted to come into force on April 1, 2027. A transition period would follow, with the Crown Corporation assuming operations on January 1, 2028. The first 9 months of the Crown Corporation's work would focus on getting the board up and running, including developing governance and operational policies. The Crown Corporation would assume staffing and operations from the GNWT on January 1, 2028. This approach ensures continuity of service while positioning marine transportation services for long-term sustainability and improved performance. Our goal is a seamless transition with no service disruption. In closing, this transition will strengthen how marine transportation services are governed and delivered in the Northwest Territories. It maintains public ownership, ensures accountability, and positions the service for improved performance and long-term sustainability. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Director. I think at the start of the presentation, it looks like we've now been joined by MLA Morgan from Yellowknife North. Thank you. First up for questions, I believe I have MLA Reid. If she'd like to start off the questions, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. I want to start first with the governance lens. You spoke in your presentation about that being something that is part of why it's attractive for the transition from a division to a Crown Corporation. I'm just curious off the top of the hop, and we'll kind of dive into questions from here, if your team has reviewed the Standing Committee report on NTPC governance and found any interesting recommendations that might apply to your transition as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you for that. Minister, did you want me to go to you directly?
Just as staff, thank you.
Or just to staff? Okay, so maybe just for, to ensure we stop ping-ponging back and forth. Why don't I pursue all questions to Dr. McEachran, and then we will, unless you raise your hand, and I'll go to you first, of course. Does that work for you, Minister?
Yeah, that works. I would say this one here is probably going to go to Nicole, though.
Okay, fair enough. And he can point and direct too.
Sure.
Just like
Awesome,
that.
thank you.
All right, I'm just trying to create a little bit of a seamless process rather than just, moving around. Okay, so Director Bennell, if you would, please.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I have reviewed that, and I watched the standing committee meeting on those governance findings. I don't have my notes in front of me here, but yes, I have reviewed it and did find it very helpful. NTPC, as a Crown Corporation, their legislation and their operations have definitely been very helpful for informing this transition, and that report was as well. Thank you.
Thank you. MLA Reid, anything further?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So building on that, I didn't want to blindside you with asking about a report that you hadn't read, so that's fantastic. I'm glad you have. So there were a couple of pieces within that report and recommendations that I'd like to highlight here. So one of which was SCOGO recommended that the GNWT establish a formal MOU with NTPC defining accountability expectations, and this was based on expert recommendations to committee to enhance public transparency. Another piece was that I sit on that committee as well. SCOGO recommended that the GNWT develop a clear framework for managing NTPC's contribution to the territorial debt cap, ensuring that capital investment decisions were made transparently and with full consideration of fiscal implications for the GNWT. So specifically on that last one, I'm wondering if the transition project for the corporation would be intending to apply a similar framework to the MTC, and if so, what mechanism, and indeed if you want to talk about the MOU as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Bennell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of an MOU, what we are looking at here would be a service level agreement that would outline a lot of these considerations, so that it still is currently in draft, and that would be something that is agreed upon between the board of directors and the minister. So that can look however we want that to look. I certainly appreciate the note about defining accountability and managing debt, so that can certainly be something that we would look into. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. I now have MLA Morse next on in the queue, followed by MLA Morgan. Okay, when you're ready.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, similar to Emily Reid, SCOGO nerd here, who just came off this governance study, so I'm all interested in this. I did note that Bill 50 doesn't require any eligibility criteria for board members. There's no requirement that directors have specific experience or be representative of NWT communities like the Prosper NWT Act, and I believe the Act, or there's requirements around NTPC board having certain amounts of expertise as well. So can the minister or staff describe the expertise profile which is going to be sought in board members? Are they going to be expected to have legitimate experience or applicable experience, I mean, or financial and legal expertise, represent northern communities? What is the goal for the board? I'm just noting that the board themselves will be appointing the CEO of the corporation, so I expect a certain amount of expertise in the industry is going to be needed.
The MLA asked the minister, it sounds more of a cabinet perspective question, so I'll go to the minister instead of the operational level. Thank you. Minister, if you would.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The goal is to have the board members with some experience. I don't know if we have the details yet on full paper, but ideally, we're doing the I guess, the planning of it, to have the board members with the experience and all that stuff. So yeah, it's in the works. Thank you.
If there's nothing further, I'll go back to the member. Emily, oh, Morris, you're on.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, I had muted myself. Yeah, okay. I am interested in why it's not included in the act, and how that's going to work going forward if there isn't a requirement for it. One other area that I thought was interesting is Section 26 of the Act allows Cabinet to convert MTC into a private company and sell its shares by regulation without returning to the Legislative Assembly. I'm just curious what circumstances would trigger Cabinet to use that provision, and yeah, I guess to get more to the point, would the minister commit to tabling any regulation made under Section 26 before the Legislative Assembly for review and consulting with affected parties before proceeding with the sale of the company?
Thank you for that, Minister. That was a question directly for you.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we'd like to run it as a Crown corporation, and I mean, that's the goal right now, and that's the goal of the whole, the bill and everything. I mean, if there was a chance of an investor or a company that's interested in purchasing it and taking it over, that would have to look at that. And I think the whole Cabinet decision, I mean, that's already, I think, that's happened before this, before the Government of Northwest Territories took it over also. So I think there's pretty positive that there would be a lot of discussion on whether or not it would be beneficial for a private entity to take over MTS. And Cabinet would have to make a very educated decision, hence the reason why we're here today.
Thank you. Just before I go to MLA Morgan, I'm just going to double down on that last question, which is MTS could sell its best tug and not tell members or the Assembly. And so I think the member's asking about transparency. Is there anything you can review and come back to committee at large on that based on MLA Morris's question? Thank you. Minister?
Yeah, thank you. I'll see if there's any staff available to answer that question, but I do agree with the member. I think that is important. So maybe that's something we can fall back on and just check over. And if there's a staff member in there that can touch on that at all. Thanks.
Okay, I'm just looking for a volunteer. They're all caucusing. Okay, Dr. McKenna, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think it's important to note that transparency is a key principle in what we expect from the Crown Corporation and its operations. So that would include transparency through board decisions and choices or board member choices. That would include transparency around reporting. And so clearly there's a strong public interest in knowing what decisions are being made and the associated financials associated with all those decisions, and the impact of those decisions on the public interest. So the service agreements also that we negotiate with the Crown Corporation, that's a principle that will be embedded in those service agreements. So I think it's fair to say that transparency is a guiding principle and will allow a certain level of comfort for everyone to be, have access to the necessary information that the Crown Corporation is undergoing.
Thank you. Again, just before I go to MLA Morgan, Emily Morris, does that get to the root of your question? In my opinion, it was not close to being answered. No offense but I'll let you come back to that. Okay. MLA Morgan, if you'd like to continue with some questions, I'll get you in now when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to the minister and staff for joining us tonight. So during the presentation, you mentioned that under government oversight, as the sole shareholder, the Gina Batee will maintain subsidy control over subsidies. However, I'm noting that MTS has been losing between about 6 million and $15.5 million annually for many years now. So I wonder if there's anything that is expected to reduce those deficits by changing to the Crown Corporation structure. Is there an expectation that the corporation will be, either doing something different operationally or be borrowing or investing in ways that lessen the need for the GNBT to provide subsidies to cover deficits? Or I wonder if you can explain what's the plan for controlling subsidies and reducing those deficits. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Dr. McCracken, when you're ready. Yeah, I was waiting for you to finish your notes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So financial sustainability is a key objective in creating the Crown Corporation. And of course, by financial sustainability, that means less subsidy payments to the Crown Corporation are hoped for over time once they get their legs under them. There are multiple opportunities for a Crown Corporation to do better from a financial sustainability perspective. And one example is the charter service. It has been a growing element of the business, offering the tugs and barges for basically renting or leasing over specific time periods. And there's been a growing number of private sector clients taking advantage of that opportunity, particularly on the marine or the Arctic Ocean side of things with clients in Alaska, Nunavut, et cetera. And clearly the Crown Corp would hope to grow that opportunity, especially as mining in the north grows. And clearly there's also a lot of defense investment happening. So the opportunity is there to definitely grow the revenue side of the business. At the same time, a Crown Corporation can also be more nimble and flexible at dealing with assets and liabilities and saving costs throughout the business, finding those efficiencies. Decisions can be made more quickly and operationally with guidance from the board. And so I think both the cost side of the business has a tremendous opportunity to improve under the Crown Corp model, as well as the revenue side of the business. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. MLA Morgan, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I also note that Bill 50 doesn't contain any borrowing limit for the new corporation, and that any debt that the MTC takes on would count against the territory's federal borrowing limit. Did the department consider establishing either a statutory or a regulatory borrowing limit for the new corporation? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Director, if you would, please.
Thank you. I'll begin and then I'll pass it over to Jacques. That is not something that we specifically contemplated. It's not something that we've seen in other Crown Corporation legislation specifically. But I can pass it over to Jacques just to speak a little bit more about what went into drafting the financial section. That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Roberge, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So first, the corporation will be submitted to the parts 8 and 9 of the Financial Administration Act. and to the framework. So there's already some controls in place in terms of borrowing. Also, in the regulation-making powers, if it were necessary to either cap or, I would say, have some oversight on the ability to borrow, that could be done through various regulation-making powers that are granted the minister and as necessary. So it may not be directly in the act with a dollar figure, but it doesn't mean that shouldn't be interpreted that the corporation just goes out and borrows any amount. There are going to be oversight and controls. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to squeeze in a quick question before I start round two. And I think my question really is about, I think it's section 13, section 13. I could go brackets 2, brackets B. But it's about the financial viability of the corporation. And what I heard was, don't worry, everything's going to be the same status quo, and we're going to continue the service we offer. But MTS has never really been financially viable in its own way. Knowing that, one of the challenges, how are you going to turn it into financially viable without changing the, say, rates on that, or including routes? And is there a provision whereas it would keep tapping into a government subsidy to ensure that its float and it floats financially as well as, obviously, not figuratively, literally, but in all seriousness, it has this ongoing accumulated deficit, and if it's going to meet the merits or objectives of Section 13, how are you going to turn that around, knowing that this is, financially challenging? So I'm curious on how you'll stabilize this, Director. Oh, no, Assistant Deputy Minister, I think she's looking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Crown Corporation will certainly require subsidization for quite some time. We'd like to see the negative delta shrink over time. The reason why that negative delta there is that subsidy is there is because it does fulfill a public interest, a social interest in serving the communities with fuel and cargo. And we know that for some of these markets, these are fairly small communities, so not a large enough market for the private sector to just take it and run with it and make money doing it. So there will always be that sort of function associated with the Crown Corporation, which will be preserved through the service agreement that they reach with us as a government and through oversight mechanisms. At the same time, the rates that are posted for shipping cargo and the fuel into the communities will try and balance the elements of fair, obviously, for the customers and the clients, and competitive. At the same time, allow for that degree of cost recovery for the business. One thing I mentioned earlier, Mr. Chair, is that the charter side of the business with larger private sector clients, that's a different sort of negotiation on what is paid for those charters. It's not the same sort of, per volume or per weight sort of rate that you'd see for delivery into the various communities. And so that it does offer tremendous upside revenue source for the business if they can grow that. And I think that's I believe that's it for that question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I believe the Minister would like to comment as well. Minister McKay, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and I guess I would point out that, NTCL in its heydays and back in the day when things were happening, NTCL itself was a very profitable company, and it actually used a lot of its profits to help subsidize some of its other companies. So I believe there is an opportunity for MTS as a Crown Corp to do better and better perform. And I think that's the way that this direction is going. And I can see it being a beneficial to, or benefit to making some revenue for the Crown Corporation once it's fully set up. Right now, as a GNWT, hands are tied a little bit, and we tend to end up costing ourselves a little bit more money. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister, for that. That helped. My quick second one is more of a clarification, and then I'll go back to MLA Reid to start the second round. I'm not going to dive into it. I suspect other members will, but I just, for my clarification, perhaps the public's, just to get the conversation started, you talked about basically job offers to everyone with the corporation, no job loss, no change. In other words, just, you know, your paycheck just has a different label on it from one day to the next. Will these employees be perceived, or are they real public service employees? How does it affect their pensions? And we often see the blurred lines between WSCC, Housing Corp, and Power Corp, where we're constantly viewing them. They may be technically corporations, but they're sort of public service employees. So how do we distinguish the difference? I mean, can you help with that clarification? Thank you. Director Bennell?
Do you
Or,
want
nope.
to start off with this one?
Sure.
Or, Dr. McEachran, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think first and foremost, you know, the goal is for the Crown Corporation to be arm's length and independent, and that includes for the staff of the Crown Corporation not to be in the public service. It does allow for greater flexibility by the Crown Corp to even compensate people at more competitive rates that are industry competitive and attract and retain talent in that regard. There's also multiple unions in this industry that all have to be accounted for, and for it to be within the public service is frankly impossible for all those unions to be accommodated. And so all of that to say, though, is that first and foremost, there's the goal of keeping all of the current staff at MTS whole and make sure they have every opportunity to benefit from this new Crown Corporation, that they don't suffer any, to the earlier point, job loss or benefits loss, that they have equal or better sort of compensation packages going forward. The key thing here is that we care about the people, we want to take care of the people that work for MTS, and we want MTS to have the best talent possible, and that includes existing talent at MTS. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that help. Okay, starting second round, I first have MLA Reid, followed by MLA Morgan. So, MLA Reid, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Building on actually the chair's comment earlier around disclosure of sale of property, Section 14B of this bill requires the MTC to prepare long-term plans for real property, assets, and equipment submitted to the minister. But there doesn't seem to be a requirement to make them public. So will these plans, is there a plan to make these plans, I guess, disclosed to the public and the Legislative Assembly? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MLA Reid. Minister, do you want to take that first? No one was looking up, so.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, ideally, we want to be transparent with all this stuff. So, I mean, we want to make sure that if there's any big purchases and asset disposal, you know, that it's all, you know, transparent and everybody knows what's going on, kind of thing. Yeah, maybe I'll ask staff to see if they want to elaborate on it more. But in the end of the result, I mean, the way I picture this is similar to the Power Corporation. As we have a Crown Corporation that you know, we purchase assets and dispose of assets similar to the way we do it in the GNWT. So thank you.
I'll confirm with staff, but they were all pointing at you, oddly enough. Director Bennell, if you had any further comment to add to the minister's observations. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chair, thank you. So this is drafted very similar to the NTPC Act. Certainly plans to make the financial asks public, as with NTPC. And, sorry, I'll throw to Jacques.
Should we go to Mr. Roberge? You look very eager on providing a detailed answer, and I'd hate to not capture that eagerness. Please, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Act provides the ability for the minister to enter into information sharing agreement with the corporation. So certainly, as the minister has talked, the minister will have some flexibility to address the reporting questions and provide the required transparency within reasonable limits. And those being, it's a corporation, and as any corporation, they have their proprietary data or information. Every corporation has that. But for the overall aspects of Section 14 sub B, long-term plans and assets and equipment, there's going to be that flexibility to ensure the required transparency. So the Act will allow for it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Roberge. Back to MLA Reid for another question, if she has one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff for that clarity. So, under section 26, there is the ability for cabinet to convert the new corporation into a private company to sell shares without returning to the Legislative Assembly. I recognize that in legislation you want to have the flexibility to anticipate situations that may not be realistic on the ground at the moment. Obviously, that was, as in your presentation, you mentioned that was something that was contemplated between 2016 and now. But under what circumstances does the minister or staff indeed contemplate that that would be something that would be triggered and would cause cabinet to contemplate selling off the assets wholesale? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Bennell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So should MTS or the corporation start to become more financially viable, we could see private sector interest in that, or indeed Indigenous government interest in that. So it's not only about potentially selling shares to private industry or selling wholesale to private industry. It could also be to invite participation of Indigenous governments or Indigenous groups. That being said, there would certainly be a process around this. I can't think of a situation that the Commissioner in Executive Council would just go ahead with something like this without some sort of public process, especially if it were to go to private industry. You would certainly want to seek interest for that, not just sell to one private entity. So I certainly think it would be contemplated that this would be a very public process. This would just be the mechanism to do so.
Sure. We're a friendly committee. Nellie Reid, do you wanted to either clarify or just dig a little deeper on that?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess just to clarify and perhaps by way of improvement to the either the statute or to forthcoming regulations, could that be clarified within the bill, or indeed is it contemplated of being clarified in the regulations? Thank you.
Thank you. Director, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's certainly something we could contemplate. Thank you.
And to the minister, maybe I'll just build on that. Minister, if you would be willing to put your, say, a heads up that maybe committee will propose something as well, and to hear your thoughts back before we finalize the bill. I mean, it may be something we want to make an amendment for. I mean, ultimately, I think we're all on the same page. We want some transparency and some support, and it's great to everyone agrees today, but that said, not everyone's going to be here tomorrow. So in a good way, hopefully, so, okay. I didn't follow with amen. I didn't say amen.
Summer's on its way. People will be on vacation.
Okay. For the official record, I meant that in the most nicest way possible. Okay, moving on to quickly, MLA Morgan, I believe you're up next, and good luck on following that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to return to the issue of rates. So in the bill, section 13 bracket 2A requires rates to be both fair and reasonable, but also financially viable. So given that, as we've established, MTS hasn't really been financially viable for quite some time, and it would be hard to see that the new corporation would be financially viable, at least initially. How does the minister or staff envision that rates are going to be set to fulfill this requirement that, of financial viability? That's my first question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Dr. McEachran.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's easy for us to acknowledge that those two principles can potentially operate in conflict, that, fair and reasonable rates, from the customer or the community perspective, would clearly there be an interest in those being as low as possible. Lower is more fair and lower is more reasonable. And then from the corporation's perspective, higher is more financially viable. So we recognize that there's a sort of inherent tension there. That said, we're certainly, I think, as people in government, no strangers to sort of, principles in tension, and there will be a constant sort of balancing act needed. I think, though, again, I kind of mentioned this earlier, that there is a sort of public interest objective here that we will need to ensure and assure through the service agreement, through oversight of the minister over the board, through any regulations that are created. And there's a whole list of potential regulations that can be created stemming from this act. So there is definitely, the public interest. There's tools or mechanisms for the fair and reasonable public interest test to be met. And at the same time, though, once it is a Crown corporation, there's going to be a lot more operational flexibility for both the board and the staff there to explore new revenue generating opportunities, as well as to find ways to cut costs. And so there'll be, a much more nimble organization, which will help achieve that financial viability while they meet the fair and reasonable public interest.
Thank you for that, and just letting you know, MLA Morris, you'll be following MLA Morgan when she's finished her second question. So, MLA Morgan, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, given that, and given the fact that unlike the Power Corporation, where there is independent oversight of rate setting, obviously there's the Public Utilities Board to verify that the rates being set, fulfill the the requirements. So in this case, it doesn't seem that there's any independent oversight of the rate setting. So whose job is it exactly to determine, whether the rates are striking the appropriate balance of fair and reasonable or financially viable? And what's the actual process for overseeing the rates and determining that they are being set appropriately? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you for that. I'll start with the minister, and then we'll work towards staff if anything's further required. Minister, if you would, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple things, I guess. First of all, with the setting of the rates, we have to keep in mind that we also have to ship our products, we have to ship our fuel, we have to ship our assets. We have to, on top of that, we send a bill or we invoice customers throughout the north. And we try to keep that reasonable. So the point of keeping down the cost of living for these clients throughout the north. So regardless of the GNWT or Crown Corporation owning the MTS, we have to ship our fuel and our products. So currently right now, and staff will probably correct me, I had this question answered a year or so ago, so I'm trying to remember it, but we don't show ourselves billing ourselves for free for fuel, for an example. Like when we ship fuel, it's just built in on our operations. So I'm pretty sure that we don't bill ourselves for that freight. So even our negative, showing of our debt of operations, could be included in the freight of our product that we ship up to the Arctic and throughout the north. So that being said, operating is a lot more difficult now as a GNWT than it would be a Crown Corporation. We definitely struggle with certain things like procurement, right? As a Crown Corporation that have that flexibility to purchase and contracts and sole source a little differently than the GNWT does. So there's a little bit more flexibility on how they could operate. And the end result being that when they go to do, as the board would review this, their rates for shipping, they would have to calculate all this stuff and put it in the fact of how we operate or how the board operates. So as it stands right now, we operate a little differently, and we absorb all the costs of operating MTS. And sometimes we hear about it from the residents of the cost of operation. So it's a little bit more difficult than a Crown Corporation. So thank you. And if staff want to elaborate, I'm sure somebody will.
Director Bennell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will elaborate on accountability around rate setting. So that would be approved by the board. So there will be a methodology set out that will be publicly available and publicly posted. That would then go to the board for approval, keeping in mind that the board is reporting into the minister, and if the minister isn't satisfied, they will have opportunities for recourse there. So if they're not satisfied that that methodology is being applied properly, or they're seeking more information, there are plenty of ways that the minister could seek out more information or clarity if they are not satisfied. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify before I go to MLA Morris, does that, the minister talked about not billing themselves, in other words, the GNWT billing itself from one department to the next. I'm not necessarily familiar with it doing it in a hidden cost way. Is there anywhere that it shows up on the balance sheet, even as an in and out? Because I'm familiar with the federal government ensuring that they show these cost transfers, even if they're just, if they're joint JV'd across one to the other, at least the cost is represented, the full cost of what something is done. So should I come back to you, Director Bennell, or for clarity or the transparency sense is, in other words, the GNWT subsidizing the fuel without telling anyone. And that's the appearance. And we subsidize lots of things, like we subsidize housing, healthcare, the list is endless. So that point is not unusual, but what the minister just pointed out was where does it show up on the balance sheet to show full performance? And the staff are scrumming, Mr. Minister, just so you know. I think we're looking for a volunteer. When you're ready, take your time. Minister, if you want to start, and then the staff.
Sorry, just to clarify my comment on that, when I was asking some questions, I think last year I was asking a question about it. It was basically stated then that, we don't invoice ourselves for the freight. How it's on the line item, I'm not 100% sure, and that's what I was kind of hoping staff would clarify. Thank you.
We're on the same page, Minister. I'm just asking where it shows up. Your statement, where it shows up on the balance sheet, because it has to be represented somewhere. In other words, someone has to eat the cost, even if it's just paper. So I go to Dr. McEachran first, please.
If I could, Mr. Chair, and for the minister, if we could take that as a commitment and look into that and clarify that after, that'd be great. Thank you.
And not to talk like too much, Chair, but that said, the point is that these things do have to show up on the balance sheet somewhere, and it's not unusual for government to subsidize, so that's not the issue. It's just where is it from a transparency. Okay, I believe I have MLA Morris next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just note that Bill 50 doesn't require any consultations with the communities it serves related to service levels, rates, operations. And as the minister is well aware, I think the communities are deeply interested in these things. Does the minister view any risk with MTC providing these services without consulting the communities on what they're providing and how? And do they envision addressing this through regulation or executive council direction? How does the minister propose managing that? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. That was directed specifically to you, so your thoughts, please.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I would, I'd hope that our board of directors are, from different regions and have the ear of the residents. So, I would hope that once a Crown Corporation is established, that there's the ability for them to, speak to community members and talk to community members on what's happening with the with marine transportation services, or what it might be called afterwards. But I mean, we're not just setting this up and never talking to the communities again. At the end of the day, I'm sure we'll hear about it as elected officials also, because we still have a say in it. But as board members throughout the territories, I'm sure there would be some input from residents, and I'm sure they'll set up an opportunity for public engagement throughout the north. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for that insight. I go to Dr. McEachran for further, if you'd like to add.
I think engagement of clients and customers and communities will be a core part of the operation at the Crown Corporation. And it's good business and it's good for relationships, and as Northerners we know how important that is, and both at the board level as well as the operational level at the Crown Corp. I think it'll be a big part of their annual planning to get out into the communities and to be speaking with clients, to be sharing information, to be hearing about how things are going, and get ideas for improving their own performance and their own service. So I think that will be a cycle they'll go through constantly across their client base and community base. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you for that insight. MLA Morris, if you'd like for a second question.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. No further questions from me.
Oh, sorry about that. I wouldn't have bothered. Before we go to MLA Reid for a third round, she'll start us off. I'm just going to squeeze in a quick one here. I hope it's a quick one for clarification. So this is sort of tied together. So how do I start it off? Which is MTS is silent on its individual evaluation. So I'm trying to get a sense of who's going to evaluate it. I'm not an accountant, but I understand how to read a balance sheet and understand if something's healthy. So it's balance sheet, and then we assess it based on debt ratio as well as sort of capacity to borrow. And so who's going to do that in a fair way? Is MTS going to bring someone in to assess it independently? And yeah, will this valuation be, of course, public? Director, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we do have a finance working group working on this as we speak in terms of preparing a financial management board submission. So that is for the initial transfer of assets and operations of the Crown, of MTS to the Crown Corporation. And as part of that work, we will have staff members working to do a full inventory of MTS property and assets. So that will feed into this. We have previous ones from NTCL dating back to about 2016-17 that have been slowly kind of updated over the years. However, that is a project for this summer to revamp those valuations and feed that into the finance working group. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I hope that would cover the full liabilities as well. And I see the director nod. Just clarify, this is now leading to my next question, although I think it was brought up by MLA Reid or at least somebody, back to borrowing limit. Now, I can appreciate from a perspective of private business where you need to be nimble, and I think that was a phrase used by Dr. McEachern earlier about being financially nimble. When you're a corporation, you need to be able to move without the structures to respond to market needs, and so that's not my objection. My concern is that the fact that the overall borrowing limit will fall on the shoulders of the territorial government and the people of the Northwest Territories. And I'm just curious, because the act as proposed does not have financial guardrails, in other words, no borrowing structure or limits on this particular issue, is there a reason, can you explain why it wouldn't? I mean, and I just want to park the question there because that's the question, but the example really comes down to is MTS could bleed the NWT government dry based on, and I'm not predicting that, I'm not seeing that as a possibility, but trust me, isn't necessarily great public policy. We know how that's worked. So is there a reason why there wouldn't have been guardrails built around this framework saying that it, you know, it has a limit and it can go to whatever stepped limit based on executive council approval, et cetera? And I mean, ultimately, we need to ensure the health and sustainable territorial government, but we can't be beholden by a corporation that its debt uncontrollably could be managed by the board, but falling on the people of the Northwest Territories with negative. So back to the point of saying guardrails and safeties. Do you have any thoughts, Minister? I'll start with that, and then I'll go to the staff if they do.
I'll just refer to the staff there if you don't mind, thanks.
And I'm just waiting until they're ready, so don't rush. Okay, so it looks like Director Benelli, you've been volunteered. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, it's a bit twofold right now, and we would like to come back to committee with some more information on this. But there are kind of the guardrails within the Financial Administration Act, and also the information sharing provision that the minister can request information from the Crown Corporation at any time, especially if they were seeming to notice that, like, maybe things are going off the rails a little bit. They can request information at any time. So yes, it's kind of within the Financial Administration Act that we do have some of those guardrails, and I am also not an accountant, and I think we can all be thankful for that. So we would like to come back with some more information on that, especially around kind of what's in the Financial Administration Act that in terms of guardrails, but do just want to say it ultimately does come down to having a very strong relationship between the minister and the board, and especially the chair of the board, to have that flow of information and good relationship. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just before I go to MLA, I just want to make a point. You can't guarantee that that's always going to be the case. And regulations and statute are, in theory, the ultimate structure, and that's what the issue is really about. And maybe we should say not run off the rails, but run aground in this case. I'm here all night, folks. Okay. MLA Reid, please, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fear you were just you were riveted by my earlier pun. So the recommendation that I spoke of earlier and that the chair just referenced in his lead up to his question was from the SCOGO report on the NTPC governance. And just for your awareness and just for on the record, the recommendation in full was the Standing Committee on Government Operations recommends that the government of the Northwest Territories develop a clear framework for managing NTPC's contribution to the territorial debt cap, ensuring that capital investment decisions are made transparently and with full consideration of their fiscal implications for the territory. And so just to bookend your question there, Mr. Chair. And I'll let you take that away and come back to committee as well. My actual question is very simple and I think straightforward. And it's just something that I have noted in my time prior to being a politician on boards. Is there any contemplation with the transition and the governance pieces that you're still developing to have staggered terms for expertise on the board? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Director, no?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to nerd out on this piece because the board stuff is my favorite part. Yes, absolutely. So what's contemplated in the act is having terms not exceeding 3 years. That doesn't mean that every person who comes onto the board will have a term of 3 years. What's also being contemplated at the moment, and this is based on advice and expertise from governance professionals across the territory, or across the country, and especially from British Columbia. They have an office that supports Crown corporations. I've been in contact with them for about 1.5 years now, and a recommendation that came through loud and clear from them was to do something called like the first board principle, where especially for a new Crown corporation, you would set up a board that has a lot of like governance expertise, financial expertise, right from the beginning. So you would have a board focused on that to get the Crown Corporation up and running. So some of your governance professionals might have a 1-year term or a 2-year term, and then they would be staggered to switch out with other people with different expertise as the corporation evolves. So it's all based on a competency matrix. That is what we're looking at now, which is being developed over the summer and would be approved by the minister before any kind of recruitment happens. But yes, certainly staggered terms are a must. You don't ever want to see a mass exodus from a board, because then you have all of your expertise on its way out. It sets sail, I guess you could say. Hey, it was my turn. It was my turn.
We still have time for others to jump in.
So, long answer. Thank you for letting me nerd out a little bit on this. But yes, absolutely, staggered terms with different sets of expertise. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Awful proud on sneaking that one in, aren't you? Very good. Emily Reid, anything further?
Walking the plank is the wrong kind of boat, right, Mr. Chair? Oh, dear. So I don't know if I don't believe your presentation explicitly discussed this, and it's on governance pieces. Is there contemplation in the transition in the early days, I suppose, especially for public servants to sit on the board? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Bennell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Act does not preclude public servants from sitting on the board, because there is a lot of expertise within the public service, especially, let's say, at the deputy level, to provide that expertise on government and some of those government processes. So that was done on purpose so that we do have the ability to appoint public servants to the board. However, it is not the goal of this transition to populate a board with all public servants. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Just to clarify, I don't have anyone on the list at the second. Just to clarify, how are the pensions going to be protected if they're going from one to the next? And I think, as Dr. McEachran had said, there's more than one union and whatnot. So can you clarify on how people will be protected? Thank you. Director Bennell.
Mr. Chair. We are working with the Northern Employee Benefits Service on that question right now. So there is a reciprocal agreement with the Government of the Northwest Territories and Northern Employee Benefits Service, otherwise known as NEBS, more popularly, I believe. So we are working with them right now so that any employees that would transfer over, there is that reciprocal agreement that they would be made whole through the NEBS pension and benefits plan. And that is a main concern of the transition team, is to make sure that nobody is without as part of this transition. So we are working very closely with NEBS at this time, still working through a lot of those details, but it's been a very, very positive experience working with them, and they are very eager to help. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Just to come back to clarifying the deficit and the current cumulative deficit, and are you able to talk about the challenge I'm having here at a question is how are we going to manage that? Is it too early in days to talk about how this is going to be managed, because I mean, ultimately, if it's unsustainable, and this is the relationship with the GWT I'm getting at, is that, is the intent that the territorial government will always provide a cash infusion, and yes, this pun is intended, to keep it afloat. But in all honesty, I'll come to the minister, because I think it's certainly more of a political style question, but ultimately, if we know, and this is no disrespect to MTS, I want to stress that. I mean, you can't control the water and you can't control some of these factors, but you have to deal with what you've got. And hence you got to make it as efficient as possible, and you can only do that to some extent. I'm well aware of those problems. But that said, knowing that it runs a historic, ongoing, growing deficit, it's going to need a backstop. And so is the cabinet prepared to ensure that it has a regular cash infusion, at least on either the short term, or say, for example, and for the next 5 years, they're going to commit, say, an additional $3-4 million ongoing until it gets on its, holds its own water. I almost said on its feet, but that said, because I just don't know how we're gonna do it, given the fact that historically, it's not been able to survive on its own, and the old, why did it sell? Why did it go under? Because it couldn't sustain its business model previously, and it was a private business model. So, Minister, if you could start off, and we'll run from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and I feel the frustration of everybody when it comes down to the constant debt of MTS and operating it. Of course, there's many factors, but it shouldn't be a annual thing. It's definitely in good times where NTCL was operating, it was a profitable business, and hence the reason why it was, operated as well as it was for many years before it had its financial problems. And I would like to see the Crown Corporation, or MTS, or whatever it's called at the time, be that successful, and I would like to see it turned over successfully to the Crown Corporation, and that's been my goal since essentially taking over as the Minister of Infrastructure. And at the end of the day, I think some of the things we have to realize is we're not operating that MTS efficiently right now, and we need to, and that's the goal right now. So the last few years have shown a deficit. However, last year our deficit wasn't as big as projected, which was beneficial because there was some there was some profit in some of the charter work that was done, and the budget going forward shows less of a deficit. So fingers crossed with the smooth sailing, I'll use that pun, for this this season and everything else, high water, everything like that. If everything goes successful, hopefully this year we will show another successful sailing season with less deficit. So I have faith. I have a lot of, I get frustrated when I see the numbers, and I've been going through everything as much as I can to try to help improve MTS as it sits right now, so that when it's handed over as a Crown Corporation, it's way better off than what we had it. So, yeah, feel your frustration. I hear you, and I don't know if any other staff want to elaborate on that. Thank you.
Not a problem. And it's not meant to be meant to be rude or a cheap shot, as they say, but it was profitable until it wasn't, and hence we are where we are today. And that's not meant to be mean. A lot of conditions changed, and that's just being frank. At the same time, I also recognize that if we don't subsidize it, we can't get fuel into the communities, or the remote Arctic communities. So the GWT in some ways is either on the hook on one side or the other. So I mean, it has to find a way to do this, because if there's not money to be made, there's money to be lost, and so we have to find a way. Okay, that's just I'm trying to say I'm a realist, but I'm looking forward to how that's managed. Okay, that said, I don't have any more questions, and it looks like committee's been questioned out at this particular moment. But rather than saying we're releasing you or dismissing you at this particular phase, what I'm going to say is we'll always hold the right to call you back if we have more, or we can provide them in writing, of course. At this particular time, we usually ask if anyone from the floor has any particular questions, and we don't have anyone in the gallery at this particular moment. Not to say our millions of subscribers aren't out there following us very closely. So maybe what I'll do is I'll work towards a wrap-up, and I'll ask the minister if you had any final comments as we work towards a close. Minister McKay, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the staff and committee members for everything tonight, and some valid points brought up this evening. So these are good constructive criticism of what's going on, and I think some valid points to bring back and implement or develop into our plans moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just as I close, I want to underscore that I personally see the value in MTS, not only just as a service, but as an anchor employer in the community, including Inuvik, by the way, not just Hay River, and its support services throughout the up and down the Delta and along into the Beaufort Sea. So I only ask the questions because I'm worried about sustainability and viability, but I'm not blind to the key role it plays to functioning communities and a functioning North. So that said, it looks like we've reached the end. So I will conclude this evening's discussion and say there'll probably be more, but for this evening, we're come to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.